So today, in our session, we would essentially focus on requirements management core principle. Now, the agenda for today's session is about understanding the requirements management process. We would touch base something about change management. Then we would try to understand what is tracing a particular requirement in a particular requirement traceability matrix. What is baselining requirements, what is versioning requirement on that grounds, what is forward tracing, what is back tracing, what is bidirectional tracing, and we would also see a sample requirement traceability matrix. Then we would touch base upon maintaining requirement, reusage of requirement, prioritizing requirement, assessing requirements change, approving requirements, what's the process that we follow when it comes to approving a particular requirement, and we would touch base upon progressive elaboration. Now, when I say requirements management, what comes into your mind? What do you understand by requirements management? Now, so far we have covered three knowledge areas, that is elicitation, requirements elicitation, requirement analysis and design, and we have covered some part of strategy analysis. This is the fourth knowledge area when it comes to business analysis practice, that is requirements management. So what do you understand by requirements management? Am I audible to everyone? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what is your thought process around requirements management? What do you understand by requirements management?
uh, the steps that follow once we have all the requirements in our hand.
Okay. Any other opinion?
Gathering all the requirements and prioritizing them.
No, prioritizing is one of the core principles of requirements management. Gathering essentially happens in your requirement gathering phase itself.
Grooming of the requirements or
Okay. Okay. So essentially what happens in requirements management is like we have seen how we elicit the requirement, how we conduct the various interview techniques with the stakeholder, like we conduct the interview session or the focus group session or the brainstorming session with different stakeholders. Now, after conducting these sessions, we come to a point wherein we outline the initial level of requirements. Now, those initial level of requirements are essentially unconfirmed requirements. They are not confirmed. Then we move into the next phase of business analysis. That is your requirement analysis and design. Now, in requirement analysis and design, we tend to create concrete documents around requirements, irrespective of whatever methodology you follow, whether it's the waterfall methodology or agile methodology. We tend to create some requirement documents like your business requirement document or functional specification document or any XYZ document. Now, these documents are essentially in confirmed state. At the same time, when you talk about the designing part, we create various artifacts like your use cases, UML diagrams, or data dictionary, process flows, or your what I would say, if you consider the SQL aspects, we create the entity relationship diagram. So whatever additional information that we would be needing in and around a particular requirement, we design those artifacts. Now, these together are part of your requirement analysis and design phase. Now, after taking appropriate sign off from the stakeholder, we pass it on to the development team. Now, when we pass it on to development team, now we have to establish a change management system over there. which essentially talks about this particular knowledge area, that is your requirements management. Now, what essentially happens in requirements management is, now once you have collected all the information in your analysis phase, all the requirements, you tend to store those information in some repository for everyone's reference, whether it's the development team or whether it's the quality assurance team or whether it's the business sponsor or the business stakeholders or any XYZ stakeholder who is directly or indirectly related to your project. Now, that particular repository is where you are storing your requirements. So essentially, you are managing your requirements. Now, once you have completed all your requirements activity, requirement gathering activity in your requirements analysis and design phase, it's not like that your work is over as a business analyst. So there would be some change requested in the requirements that you have written. For that matter, you would create a new version of that particular document. Let's say one of your business stakeholders says that I need some change in this particular use case. So you would be creating a version of that use case. That is whatever change he has requested and take his approval. So what you are doing essentially over there, you are creating a version of the requirement or versioning of the requirement. Now, what is that particular tool which facilitates all this functionality? It's nothing but your requirement management tool. Now, this requirement management tool can be anything, can be Jira, can be Team Foundation Server, can be CA Central, any XYZ tool, or for that matter, any proprietary internal tool that your organization might be using for requirements management. Now, the requirements which are approved, the requirements which needs change, and the requirements which are proposed or which are not yet worked upon. All these category of requirement would go into your requirements management tool. Now, this tool can be operated depending on the project methodology, whether it's the waterfall way, whether it's the agile way, whether it's safe way, whether it's Kanban way, depending on what the project methodology you are adopting, this requirement management tool could be customized. But essentially, the end goal of all this process is to manage your requirements, to have a single repository of reference of the requirements that you have captured during your requirement analysis and design phase. Now, we would try to understand what essentially happens in a requirement management. So first, when we talk about requirement management, we first do the investigation of the requirement. Then we check the feasibility around the requirement. So investigation is nothing but your requirement elicitation phase. Now, feasibility we check in your requirement analysis phase, design in your requirement design phase. Then we construct the requirement, that is develop the requirement in the development phase. Then we test the requirement in the testing phase, and if there is any change needed in that particular requirement, then we tend to adopt a change management process. Now that process is a completely different process altogether, change management. So until then, if your requirements are intact till testing and there is no change request in place, then it can directly move to the release, that is final deliverable of the requirement. If there is some change identified in the particular requirement, then you have to follow the process again until you give the final deliverable of the requirement. So essentially in requirements management, you analyze the requirement, you trace the requirement, you prioritize the requirement, and agreeing is essentially you take justifiable and suitable approval from the respective stakeholders in and around your requirement. So that's what all happen in your requirement management process. Now, requirement management process is nothing that starts after you have taken official approval in the requirement analysis and design phase. It's an end-to-end phase for business analysis. The day when you start requirement analysis, that is the day when your requirement management should essentially start. It shouldn't be like only approved, only after you have gotten approved requirement, then only you would initiate the requirements management process. No, it's an end-to-end process. Right from the day you start eliciting the requirement till the day you are delivering that particular requirement. This particular management process covers end-to-end requirement life cycle or the core process. Now we have different tools that we use for requirement management. So most of the project management tool can be used for requirement management process as well, like your Jira, Team Foundation Server, or HP Project Portfolio Manager, or any XYZ project management tool stands good for requirement management purpose as well. So what are the essential features that we get in a particular requirements management tool? We get reports, we get dashboard, we get the change request, we get the defects, we get the issues, we get the requirements, we collaborate as in we tend to assign what requirement is complete to the development team. After development has completed the requirement, they would assign the a piece of code for testing purpose to the QA team. So that workflow is part of your collaboration in that particular tool itself. Then we create test case within that particular tool. If there are any documents that you would like to upload supporting your requirements, that also you could do with that requirement management tool. Then you could track the effort, who is the resource, what is the security or the access level that you would like to give for a particular set of requirement, because you cannot expose everything to everyone. For example, a project manager cannot expose what are the billing rates of the resources within his team. So he needs to have a secure area in that particular application which would contain this confidential document. In that context, a business analyst cannot expose everything to everyone. Like a business case, he cannot expose it to the development team or the QA team if it is very critical in nature, or any particular research statistics that he has prepared for the senior management. There is no need to expose those documents to the development team or the quality assurance team. So that particular application or the tool which is used for project management and requirements management should have that capability to have this secure area within that application wherein only the intended user should be given access to uh, uh, view those documents, not everyone. So these are some of the basic features that should be part of your requirements management tool. So if tomorrow someone asks you to do a feasibility study around which is the best tool that you consider for requirements management, if your project manager asks you or a senior stakeholder asks you, so you would essentially create a checklist of these functionalities within that requirement management tool, and considering these as baseline, now this is your baseline. Now consider this as baseline. You would evaluate different options like Jira, okay, it has all this option. Team Foundation Server, okay, it has all this option. Okay, HP's project portfolio management, it do not have any customization feature. So you can create a what I would say feasibility study report basis on your evaluation criteria around which is the best tool that you should consider for your requirement management purpose or requirement management activity. So for that reason, what all parameters you have taken as baseline? So these are the things which you have taken as baseline. Now same thing happens when you go about gathering your requirements as well. There are certain base criteria that you tend to uh, assume or tend to set when you are gathering a particular set of requirements. So that is nothing but your baselining your particular requirement. Like what is the base or around which you are developing a particular requirement? Or for that matter, the other case could be if you are having a particular requirement for one particular sprint cycle. Now your stakeholder says that I would like to modify this particular requirement in the next sprint cycle. So the requirements which you have developed in sprint 1, that would be considered as your baseline requirement, and the subsequent changes or the impediments that you create to that particular requirement either in sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, sprint 5, that would consider as the upgraded version of that requirement, or that process is called as versioning of that particular requirement. Now, what all tasks can you perform within your requirements management tool? So you could trace the requirement, You could maintain the requirement, you could prioritize the requirement, or you could assess requirement change, and you could obtain official approval in and around the requirements from the appropriate stakeholder. So these are the essential 5 activities that you would be performing within your requirements management tool. Now, what would happen if a company or a project do not sponsor you a requirement management tool? So you cannot, what I would say, ignore that situation. So the best approach is to create a Excel tracker wherein you could do all this activity. So if in case your company or your project do not have that much budget for what I would say, for using a requirement management tool or purchasing a licensed version of a requirement management tool, you could create a simple traceability matrix and perform these activities in that as well. But the only difference would be if you do it in Excel tracker, you have to manually update all this thing. But whereas if you adopt a requirement management tool, the system would automatically create all the traces and logs for you, like who updated the requirement, who commented on that particular requirement, on what date and timestamp the status of this particular requirement change. So these all small activities, your manual effort would be saved if you are using a full-fledged requirements management tool. Like I said, the requirements lifecycle begins with the representation of the business need as a requirement. Like I said, in requirement elicitation phase itself, your requirement management process begins. Then it continues through the development of the solution. After you have taken necessary approval and sign off from the business user, it goes on for your development of that particular requirement or solution, and ends when the solution and requirements that represent it are retired. Now, what do you understand by retired? In a context of requirement management, what do you understand by retired? I have already given you an example of retiring a particular requirement. If you could recollect anyone. Sorry, sorry, your voice was too low.
So when the requirement is implemented
No. Any other view? Okay, so essentially what happens in requirements world is like you have created an application. Now, whenever your business sponsor initiates a particular project, he has a vision of next 5 years or next 10 years. Now, whenever you are developing a particular requirement, or for that matter, you are gathering a particular requirement, if you compare your activity or align your activities or tasks that you are performing in an order around gathering the requirement, it may take you around 3 months to 4 months to complete with your analysis phase. Now, after you have completed your analysis phase, your development starts. Now, development phase may take around 6 months and testing phase may take around 3 months. So, in total, within 1 year, your end-to-end requirements are delivered. Now, after the requirements are delivered, it is the time when your actual end user starts using that particular requirement. And the end user may use that particular system for 2 years, for 5 years, for 6 years. Okay, but you are not developing anything in and around that particular requirement. Only you are handling some change request or some handful data fixes or bug fixes in that particular application. So that doesn't mean the requirements are retired. The requirement would retire only on that day when the system is officially shut down or a newer version of that system comes into the picture. For example, your Microsoft Office suite. Now this Microsoft Office suite, you can create Word document in Microsoft Office 2007. You can create in 2003, 2014, 2016, and so on. Now, there are certain features which are no more supported in particular versions, like the newer version, the features are no more supported. Why? Because Microsoft has officially retired those functionalities or retired those features. So the day when business sponsor feels that this particular requirement is of no use for the end user, that is the day when your requirements are retired. It's not like you have developed the requirement and completed the testing, then it is required. Only when your business sponsors decide and the feature which correspond to that particular requirement are of no significant use to the end user, that is the day when your requirements are retired. So essentially the time frame around retirement of requirement, again it depends on the feature. So some features are there to stay, without which the application cannot work, but some features are present in application which no one uses. It is an additional headache to that particular system. So those features are a possible candidate to be retired the earliest. So typical time frame for retirement may be, for unused feature, maybe 2 to 3 years, and for useful feature it can vary from 5 to 10 years as well. Now, coming to the other aspects of requirements lifecycle, the management of requirements does not end once a solution is implemented. Like I said, once the development and quality assurance is completed, the management doesn't end over there. If there is a change request, if there is a bug fix, if there is an issue that occur in your particular environment, you are supposed to trace those requirements with the help of your requirements management tool. So throughout the life of solution, requirements continue to provide value when they are managed appropriately. So whenever a change request comes to you as a business analyst, so whenever you start your initial analysis, so what is the first repository that you look into? So the first repository is nothing but your requirements management repository, wherein you tend to study the impact of that change into your existing system. So you create an impact analysis document, like in the context of existing system, if I relate this change to functionality A, functionality B, functionality C. So these three functionalities are impacted by this particular change. So how and from where you get this information? You get this information from your requirements management repository or your requirement traceability matrix for a better what I would say understanding purpose. Now the concept of life cycle is separate from a methodology or process used to govern business analysis work. Like I said, irrespective of whatever methodology you use, whether it's agile, Kanban or waterfall, the process of requirement management is completely different. Okay, that's completely different. So do not ever correlate these two things together. The requirements lifecycle management is different, and the process under which requirement lifecycle management is being executed, the project or the project methodology or the process, they are completely independent of each other. You cannot have a link between these two. Now, the other part, it says requirements may be in multiple states at one time. Now, requirements can have different level of severity, different level of priority, or can be in a grooming state. So it essentially talks about the different stages or states a requirement can be at the same time. It's not like that the requirement would be finished, unfinished, complete or incomplete. It would always be in one state at a time. It can be in multiple states at one time as well. Now, can anyone interpret me what this image relate to? What do you understand by this image? How do you relate this image to a change? Okay, let me give you a clue. This house is our requirement, and this fire is nothing but your change. Now, what do you relate between these two? Okay, let me ask you a basic question. Let's say you are in this particular house, and all of a sudden fire catches, and you are unable to control that fire. What would happen?
Uh, we'll call for some help.
Okay, even after you have called for help, the fire is uncontrollable. So it would ultimately burn your entire house. So
House.
change is nothing but like a fire. If it is not controlled at right time, it would burn up all your other requirements. All your requirement in this context, a house, it would create a huge impact on that. So whenever you see a change, you have to control that change. That's the reason why we have change management process. Now I won't explain it in depth because it's again 350 360 pages process that we follow for a change management. I would touch base at a very high level. So change is nothing but a fire which, if not controlled, it would burn your entire work or the entire development that you are doing. So if you consider the a typical change management process, it starts with request for change or a change request. After we receive the request for change, we do a thorough impact analysis. Impact analysis as in whether the change is suitable or not, whether it's feasible to implement or not, what all areas the change would impact, where all the change would impact, what would be the cost of the change, how big is that particular change. After you have created the impact analysis document or the feasibility report, you send it to the particular approver who has initiated or requested for a change. He would either approve your particular change document, a change process documentation like your impact analysis or feasibility study or whatever document you have created, or he would deny it. If he denies it, then the process ended over there. If he approves it, the change further goes to the development team and they start implementing that particular change. After implementing that particular change, the coding part, everything would happen over there. After that, the change would be delivered to the end customer, or sorry, the business users. The business user would review that particular piece of code that your development team has coded, or they would tend to create some reporting or KPIs, and then it would be exposed to the final end users who would actually be using the change. The change management process deals with essentially these five uh, parameters. Now, what would happen if you get a change request? Let's say this month is July, and you got a change request in this month, and until December you didn't even look at it, the change request that you got from one of your business stakeholders. So what would happen after December? What do you think? What would happen if you overlook that particular change request? You didn't even look at it.
It will impact the product.
Absolutely. The example which we saw, if the change are not controlled in the right manner at the right time, it would ultimately badly impact the particular product. So always keep a track on the change request that you are getting. Ensure that the change request or the issues or the defects, if you are working in a change management project or your what I would say support project or any project which are in such nature, you need to ensure that the issues, the defects, the change requests, they are not aging over there, because aging requirements or aging change request issues, defects, they create a huge impact on the system. Do not ever keep them for the last minute approval. Always keep a track on what's the new item that is coming on your particular week in the change management process. So you can read more about the change management process. If you feel like, I would be uploading a PDF book for that. If you feel like, you can explore more about change management process. Okay. So we would explore all these 5 tasks or the processes in the requirements management process, one after another. Now the first thing that comes in your requirements management process is your tracing requirement. Now what do you understand by tracing requirement? What do you understand by the word trace? Any idea, anyone?
Following up.
Yeah, following up is one aspect. Okay, there are other aspects to it as well. So let us understand it. Why we need tracing in particular requirement. This is to ensure that the requirements and designs at different level are aligned to one another. Now, when we are building a system, ultimately we are building an entire system, irrespective whether we develop the system in parts or whether we develop the system in incremental manner. So, some way or the other, whatever requirements we write pertaining to a end product or end system, they should be related to each other, whatever requirements we develop. So tracing is like establishing a connectivity between these different components within your system. For example, the admin module or the instructor module or an XYZ module. We need to maintain a traceability between them or a connection between them. So those connection between the requirements or the modules within a particular system could be achieved via tracing the requirements. Now, when we talk about what is essentially we do or why it is needed. So traceability enables faster and simpler impact analysis. For example, you got a change request and you want to do a impact analysis for that change request. So what you would do, you would go through your requirement traceability matrix or requirement repository and try to identify what are the connected elements that would be impacted by this particular change, or what are the connected functionalities that would be impacted by this particular change. For example, in your admin module, let's say the change request is to add a additional level of the user role. For example, we would like to add a supplier user role. Now that supplier user role would impact the configuration of the admin module. Now, what would be the read permission for that supplier? What would be the write permission for that supplier? What all dashboard he would be able to view the um, uh, view when he logged in as a supplier? What are the possible elements that would be impacted? So traceability helps us identify those connections between the newly introduced change. Next, it helps us understand more reliable discovery of inconsistencies and gaps in requirement. So in this process, we may come to a situation wherein we feel that okay, in order to support this particular requirement, we have a missing element in the system, or we do not have the missing needed configuration to support this change. For introducing a supplier user role, we do not have a necessary configuration element. For example, the supplier dashboard is not present in the current system. We would have to build that supplier dashboard uh, for this newly introduced role, because when he would log in as a supplier, he would be having his own independent dashboard. Now, since the system do not have a user role like supplier where they would create a dashboard, so that would be identified as gap to create a new dashboard for supplier user. So that is what it helps us to understand, the traceability. Then it gives deeper insights into the scope and complexity of the change. How critical is the change? How much time it would take? What would be the needed effort for implementing that change? Everything would be clear when we tend to perform a impact analysis around the requirements which are in connection to that particular change. And lastly, it talks about reliable assessment of which requirements have been addressed and which have been not. So which requirement has been addressed in the context of supplier, like we would be configuring the admin module and add a user role supplier, and which requirements have not yet been addressed, like the introducing a dashboard for the supplier user role. So that is something not yet addressed, that is identified as a gap, and that is something we need to build from scratch in order to accommodate this particular change request. So traceability essentially helps us to do a thorough impact analysis and feasibility study in and around a particular change within a particular project. Now, if you consider the tracing part, there are these kind of elements that would come into the picture. The first part is your forward tracing requirement. So here what happens, the mapping takes place from requirement to the end product. Requirements to the end products, as in when you are mapping your written or approved requirement to the actual working product or the actual working software. That process is called as forward traceability. So it's essentially helps us to create test cases in and around the particular requirement. Now, what is backward traceability in that context? So backward traceability is like you are mapping the end product to the requirement, like how your system is working currently and what was the requirement initially. So you are back tracing the requirement, like how the system is functioning to how the requirements were captured. So you are going backward direction. So that is backward tracing of requirement. In forward tracing, you go from requirement to the actual system. So that's the difference between forward tracing and backward tracing. Now, essentially, when we work in a particular project, we do not do a only forward tracing or backward tracing. We do both kind of tracing, bidirectional traceability. That is mapping your end product to requirement and requirements to the end product. End product is nothing but your actual working software system. Now, what is requirement traceability matrix then? So, forward and backward traceability is typically performed using what is called as requirement traceability matrix. So, essentially, your requirement traceability matrix is something similar to this. So, whatever project you would be having, your requirement traceability matrix would look like this. So, here you would be having the versioning part. Here you would be having the core functionality, and here you would be having all the requirements and its statuses and whatever the references you would be having. For example, for this particular requirement, the application shall be compatible with all existing electronic calendars. Where is the technical specification? Which system component it should map to? What is the software module? What is the test case number you would map it to? So all this information you have to fill. What is the verification? Which release this requirement was implemented? And if there are any additional comments that you would like to introduce or add, those kind of thing you would be writing. So you would be creating this traceability for every single piece of requirement you write in your particular project, depending on the category of the requirement. So this is the actual functionality. Now within this particular functionality, these are your requirements. So everything has to go through a process of traceability. You have to trace the document where it talks about this particular requirement, the technical spec or functional specification document, the system component, the software module, the test case number, which date it or which release it was tested, what was the release number or build number it was developed, what date it was verified, who verified it, all those information would come into the picture. Now same thing you would do for non-functional requirement or any XYZ category of requirement that is available for your particular system. So you could see this version 1, version 2. So essentially in these are the set of functionalities which were released in a typical version. So version 3 had this much functionality released. Version 2 had this much functionality delivered to the customer. Version 1 had this much functionality delivered to the customer. And what are the statuses of these particular items? What is the source of information from where you created this particular requirement? Or what is the system component by which you should be able to perform this functionality? All of these things would come into the picture when you are creating a requirement traceability matrix. So this is how your requirement traceability matrix looks like in actual project context. So you would be having all the demographic information over here, like the project name and what is the class of the project, team name, or whoever is the associated relevant stakeholder for that particular project. So this is when you create a manual requirement traceability matrix. So similar requirement traceability matrix can be achieved with the help of tools as well, like your Jira or any XYZ tool which you have created. So the assignment which I gave you, you can create a requirement traceability matrix. So by now you must be familiar with creating all the artifacts, the UML, the use cases, or whatever what I would say data dictionary that you have created. So list down all your requirements, maybe it in the format of user story, or maybe it is in this particular format. Try to map those artifacts with this particular requirement, like what would go, what all supporting design document you have, what is the software module, test case number, tested in, implemented, and verification number, all those stuff. Or there is one more version of this. You can create a requirement traceability document in this format also. If it's an agile project, you would be creating an epic, you would be creating a user story module wise, what is the use case number, what are the requirement ID, what is the requirement type. If there are any related requirement, you would highlight the requirement number. For example, SO10 is related to SO1 to 5, these particular requirements. So these kind of traceability you could achieve. And regarding the status, you could say that prototype pending, or prototype, if it is completed, then you have to highlight what is the document name of that particular prototype. Development has been started or not, how complex it is, what is the story point, what is the sprint cycle, what is the QA status, what is the release version, and what is the release date. So this way also you could trace your particular requirement. This is another way of tracing the requirement in an agile context. Okay. Now, when we talk about maintaining the relationship between traceability, so essentially we trace the requirement with these four relationships: derive, depends, satisfy, and validate. Now, what are these relationships? Now, derive is the relationship between two requirements used when the requirement is derived from another requirement. For example, in this particular requirement, if you see the registration is your base requirement, register a new user. Then the derived requirement is register a new user via Facebook or register a new user via Google. So these two are derived requirement of this base requirement. That is your derived relationship. Now coming to depends relationship. Now this talks about the relationship between two requirements when a requirement depends on another requirement. like what, depending on the necessity and effort. Now, what could be the example of depends requirement over here? So, login. Now, login is dependent on registration. Until and unless you do not have a registered user, how can you enforce login of that particular requirement? So, login functionality or forgot password functionality has a dependency on registration requirement. Once the user has been registered, then and only he could log into the application, he could um, retrieve his forgotten password, he could go to the dashboard and so on. Now, the other type of requirement relationship is your satisfy requirement relationship. Now, it defines the relationship between an implementation element and the requirement it is satisfying. For example, the relationship between a functional requirement and a solution requirement that is implementing it. For example, if we consider the registration, the login, the forgot password, within the dashboard, we have these category of requirements. So in forgot password, we have two things: forgot password via email and forgot password via OTP. So these two functionalities satisfy your forgot password requirement. In dashboard, we have view the user dashboard, modify the user dashboard, add whatever the functionality, and modify, delete whatever the functionality. So these four requirements satisfied this particular functionality as a whole. So essentially, satisfying means the element that defines the completeness of that particular component or that particular requirement. For example, as a business analyst, if I would like to send a status report to my project stakeholder saying that the dashboard functionality is complete. So when I can say my dashboard functionality is complete? Only and only when these four requirements are complete and it satisfied my dashboard functionality. So satisfy talks about all the necessity that are in place has to be completed before we typecast it as it is what I would say satisfied. Now the fourth relationship is validate the requirement. So validation essentially talks about mapping your requirement with the necessary test cases. Now, whenever you have analyzed a particular requirement, you tend to create some acceptance criteria or some evaluation parameter, like how you would be testing that particular requirement. Now, that is one aspect to it from a requirement engineering perspective. But when you are writing a test case, you also tend to cover some negative test cases as well. So together, they are used to validate the relationship between the tracing of the requirement. So these are the four essential relationships that are present in a particular tracing part of a particular requirement. Okay, any questions, anyone so far? Okay, so let us move to the next section. So the next process that we would do after tracing the requirement is maintain the requirement. Now we have all our requirement traced, we have all the connections, all the relationships in place. Now we want to maintain our requirement. Now, why we need to maintain the requirement? So the purpose to maintain the requirement is to retain requirement accuracy and consistency throughout and beyond the change and the entire requirements lifecycle management. And why and how do we achieve that? So in order to maximize the benefit of maintaining and reusing a particular requirement, it has to be consistently represented, reviewed and approved for maintenance using a standard process, and easily accessible and understandable. To summarize in short, we tend to maintain requirement in a context when we feel that whatever requirements we have written so far, those requirements are in such a state that they support reusage of the particular requirement. Like I explained you why we intend to reuse a particular requirement, so that if any new project comes to an organization, the same set of requirements could be deployed into that particular new project. So maintaining or reusing a requirement essentially cater to that aspect of the particular project. Now consistently represented means whenever you are writing requirements, let's say in a user story format or in a typical waterfall format. You have a consistent way of writing a particular requirement. You don't write one statement in a different way and second statement in a different grammatical context. You tend to form a standardized set of statement. Like in this particular example, if you see this particular example over here, all these statement has a shall part. So this requirement, set of requirements are having a consistent way of representing the requirement. Same case goes for the user stories as well. In user story also we have a standard what I would say defined to write the user story. So we need to maintain a consistency around the requirements when we are writing the requirements. Now, what should be the responsibility of a business analyst when it comes to maintain or reuse a particular requirement? So they are responsible for conducting maintenance to ensure this level of accuracy is retained. For example, requirements to be properly maintained, they must be clearly named and defined and easily available to the stakeholder. So whenever a stakeholder feels that what is that particular requirement, they should be able to search that particular requirement in any of the XYZ tool they would like to. Now, can anyone tell me what is that characteristics of a particular requirement which would help us maintain the requirement? Whether it's requirement attributes or requirement properties. It's one of them, attributes or properties. If anyone can recollect, I have already explained it in one of the session. Or it would be both.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, my question is, what is that particular element in requirements world which would help us maintain requirement? Is it requirement attribute? Is it requirement properties? Or is it both? To give you an example of requirement attributes, priority, risk, status, iteration number, difficulty, cost to implement, completion date, these are all part of requirement attribute. To give you an example of requirement properties, it is independent, negotiable, testable, unambiguous, atomic. These are example of your requirement properties. So what do you think? In order to maintain and reuse a particular requirement, out of these, what is needed? Requirement attributes, requirement properties, or both?
Maybe both.
Yes, absolutely, both. Because when we are maintaining the requirement, from a business analysis standpoint, our KRAs would focus on requirement properties. The requirement has to be independent, testable, atomic, then unambiguous. From a business stakeholder standpoint, the important part would be the requirement attributes, like what is the priority, risk, status. So in order to maintain and reuse the requirement, we would be needing both. Depending on the stakeholder and the business, they would choose which way they would like to see the requirement in that particular requirement management. Now, when we talk about reusage of requirement, this can be done within the current project, within the project in similar nature, within the similar department, and can be done throughout the organization when it comes to reusage of the requirement. And what is that approach that would help us in deciding reusage of requirement? It is the information management approach. This indicates how requirements would be managed for reusage. After that, the third process is prioritizing requirement. Now, when it comes to prioritizing requirement, why we need prioritization? So prioritization is to rank requirements in order to find the relative importance. And what all things can be prioritized? The ranking of that particular requirement, the severity, or the statuses. These are some of the elements that could be prioritized. We already have a brief discussion on prioritization, so I won't be emphasizing more in this particular session because this is something we have already covered. So this is the basis of prioritization, like what should be the benefit of prioritization. What would be the penalty if the requirement is not prioritized and implemented? Like I explained you, there is rewards and penalty clause in your statement of work. If you do not implement a particular requirement within a specified timeline, it could be a penalty to your project. What is the cost of that particular requirement? What is the risk if you do not prioritize that particular requirement? What are the dependencies? How soon can you implement the particular requirement? How stable is that particular requirement? Is it a regulatory or policy compliance? So these all factors contribute to your prioritizing the requirement. Now, what are the challenges in prioritization? The essential challenge in prioritization is like it's not always in the hands of business analysis or the outsourcing company. It's always in the hands of the stakeholders. So you as a business analyst have to come to a specific conclusion wherein all of the stakeholders give equal importance to the prioritization item. So let's say we have 50 features for prioritization. Some stakeholders says that feature 1 to 5 are important to them. Some stakeholders say feature 5 to 10 are important to them. We cannot prioritize each and everything because we have a defined time box of bandwidth with our team, the development team. So we have to essentially come to a conclusion, come to a negotiation wherein we define, okay, basis on our discussion, we agree upon this 1 to 5 item as high priority item and we would considering it in our particular sprint. So essentially in agile context, your sprint planning meeting deals with prioritizing the requirement. Now, when you are prioritizing a particular requirement, it's not a one-time process. If you consider the agile model, after every sprint, there is a sprint planning meeting wherein your prioritization of requirement happens. So it's a continual process. Every time your sprint ends, you have to start with a prioritization activity or sprint planning activity. So the prioritization has to be continual in nature. Next, we talk about assessing requirement change. This is the fourth process in requirements management process. Now, why we need assessing requirement change? In order to evaluate the implication of proposed change to requirements and design. So whatever impact analysis that we would be having, we need to assess the requirements change, like what is the change and what and how it should be impacting the overall requirements which are there in your requirements management proposal. So it essentially deals with overall strategy. It affects the value delivered to the business or the stakeholder groups. It impacts the time to deliver or the resources required to deliver the value, and it alters any risk, opportunities or constraints associated with the overall initiative. Like I said, whenever a change request comes to you, you tend to create an impact analysis document and a feasibility report, wherein you tend to understand this new requirement, how it would be impacting the other component of that particular system. So essentially, when you are doing an impact analysis, you are doing nothing but you are assessing requirements change, like what all things it would bring in when a change is requested by a particular stakeholder. Now, in order to perform requirement change, we need to assess the formality. Assessing formality as in what all things needs to be changed. If there are any gaps, if there are any additional information needed. So we tend to assess the formality of the change. That is the first process we do. After that, we do a thorough impact analysis. We create an impact analysis document wherein we rightly identify what's the benefit of the change. If we have implemented this particular change, what would it, what and how it would benefit the business stakeholder. What would be the cost of the change? If it is big in size, small in size, medium in size, what is the cost of that particular change? How it would be impacting the other components of the particular system. In what way it would be delivered, the scheduling part, within first sprint, second sprint, or third sprint, and what is the urgency or the priority of that particular change. Do you need it in next month, next sprint, or in the upcoming sprint, or what, how it is, how urgent it is. After that, we create an impact resolution. So impact resolution is like, depending on the approach, all your stakeholder, your business stakeholder, your business analyst, your project manager, they would be giving an official approval. Either they would be approving it or denying it. If they deny it, the process ends over there. If it is approved, it goes for further implementation, then review and reporting process. Like we saw in that change management diagram, the 5-step. After impact is resolved, after you have completed your impact analysis, after it has been approved or denied, the other development and deliverable part proceeds. Now the fifth process is approving the requirement. Now what we essentially do in approving the requirement and why it is needed. So the purpose of approving requirement is to obtain official agreement and approval of the requirements and design. So whatever requirements document or design document you create as a business analyst, we need to get it approved, because we cannot pass on the unapproved requirement to the development team or the QA team to proceed further. We need to have a approved set of requirements. So that's the reason why we need approving a particular requirement. In this process, we tend to ensure clear communication of the requirement. We interact with different stakeholders, and we have a clear communication between the stakeholder in and around that particular requirement, like why you need the requirement, what are the possible implication around that particular requirement, or what it is, and how we should go about that particular requirement. Those kind of what I would say um, conversation we initiate with our business stakeholder, because whenever you are working as a business analyst, when it comes to approving or negotiating for a particular point, you have to have some research or evidence to support your justification when you are justifying why it is needed or answering the why part. So whenever you are creating an impact analysis, you tend to do a multiple level of impacts, like multiple level of asking question. Why this thing happened? Okay, if this thing happened, why this thing happened? Okay, if this thing happened, why this thing happened? And so on. So that is why we tend to have a approving what I would say process in place once all the requirements are assessed and created. Now typically, when it comes to approving a requirement, a BA has this set of responsibility. He first understands who is the stakeholder who would be responsible for approving the requirement. If multiple stakeholders have different viewpoint around approving the requirement, so you have to do a conflict and issue management between the stakeholder. You have to gain consensus between them. You have to gain everyone's approval, and you have to track and communicate approval. Now, how you would be communicating approval? You would be communicating the approval via your requirements management tool. Now, before going to the progressive elaboration part, now let us see how we answer the why part. Let's say my business impact is issue in production environment. Production is nothing but your UAT environment. Now, as a business analyst, when I go for an impact analysis, I tend to answer certain why. Now, when I saw this issue coming to me, that issue in production environment. Now, the first why I identified as the reason it was missed by QA team. Now, why it was missed by QA team? Because dev team did not code it. Why the dev team did not code it? Because the reason was requirement was not specified in the requirement doc. Why it was not specified in requirement doc? The reason is business users never gave such requirement. Now, why business user did not give such a requirement? Because business users felt this to be assumed. So what is the business impact, or what is the impact analysis conclusion that we found issue in production environment is the assumption by the business user. So business user has assumed that this would come to us in the final code, but business analysts were unable to take such requirement and necessary signed off, due to which it was not present in requirement document, by which the development team didn't code it, by which the QA missed it, and ultimately the issue happened in production environment. So this is an example of doing impact analysis by doing or asking 5 whys. It can extend up to 7 whys or 10 whys, depending on how deep you go when you perform your impact analysis. Now the final topic for today is progressive elaboration. Now what do you understand by progressive elaboration? Now, can anyone relate this picture? What it is happening in this particular picture? Okay, so when we start with a particular project, it's at the initial level. We don't know what is the end product. We only have a vision in our mind. Okay, our end product would look like this. After every sprint or after every release, we get a more developed version of that particular system until it reaches the final state. So progressive elaboration talks about a continuous process that happens in a particular project, which consider all the elements that have been developed so far, and depending on that, taking it as base, we go further about re-enhancing or modifying that particular product. So progressive elaboration essentially deals with the evolving requirement. Like in an agile context, we do not know the requirement upfront right at that point of time. So what we do essentially is like we progressively elaborate the requirement. We tend to understand all the permutation and combination in and around that particular requirement. So this is the concept of project management, but it is used by business analysts as well. The progressive elaboration in any XYZ project. So that's all we have understood in today's session. To summarize, we understood what is requirements management, what is change management, what is tracing of requirement, how do we baseline the requirement, version the requirement, what is forward tracing, back tracing, bidirectional traceability around requirement. We saw requirement traceability matrix. We saw what is maintaining and reusing the requirement. We saw how to prioritize the requirement. We saw assessing the requirements changes in case a change request comes in. Then we saw how to get approval for a particular requirement. We saw the requirement approval process, and we saw the progressive elaboration. Any questions, anyone so far? Okay, if there are no questions, then this is the final assignment for this program. Whatever artifacts you have created so far, whatever assignments you have completed, you have to trace those documents in this requirement traceability matrix. So this is a sample template I would be uploading in that particular access area. You could refer to that particular template and write all the name of the document that is having a relationship between the particular requirement. First, you have to write all the requirements. Then you have to identify what is the use case document for this requirement, what is the UI screen document for this requirement, what is the data dictionary document for this requirement for this document. If you have specified the requirements in this particular numbers, then you could write the requirement numbers as well in that particular document. So this is your last and final assignment for this particular program.